Go for it.
We are recording.
Okay. I'd like to start the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors for East Norton Township, November 17th, 2020. We'll start with the roll call. Chief, you want to start?
Brandon Pasquale, Chief of Police.
Jim Sullivan, Director of Engineering Services.
Dave Chris, Director of Finance.
Jeff Winterbottom, Assistant Manager.
Bob Hart, Township Manager.
John Kilkenny, Township Solicitor.
Supervisor Dennis DeSanto.
Amanda Capoletti, Vice Chair.
Ashley DePiro, Supervisor.
Joe Gavanis, Supervisor.
And Kevin McDevitt, Chairman of the Board. I'd like to announce that we met in executive session to go over personnel issues and possible litigation. At this time, I'd like to mention about Mr. Garcia, Don Grazia. Don was a past supervisor for East Norton Township. He passed away on October 31st, 2020. He was born in Phoenixville, October 25th, 1952. Don was active in the community where he served as a troop leader for visitation. He was also president of the Little League, and he was on the Planning Commission, and he was on the Board of Supervisors for 12 years, from 2001 to 2013. I'd like to have a moment of silence for Don. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is to approve the regular minutes for October 27th, 2020. I'd like to make a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, are there any questions on the motion? Any concerns? None being, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the township reports. I'd like to make a motion to approve the township reports. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
that.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Gavanis. Are there any questions on the motion? None being, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Citizens to be heard. Dave, do you have any emails?
We do, Mr. Chairman. We have 3 questions that have, emails that have come in. The
Okay.
first one is from Joe Bilchicki. I probably butchered that name. It's Bilcicki. And it reads, "A sincere thank you for the job that the Public Works crew does all year long. And as a corner property owner with many trees, especially this time of year, the leaf gathering crew always does an outstanding job in our neighborhood. We appreciate all of them." There is a second email from Mary Beth Cronin, Kinglet Drive. Says, "Good evening. Here are the questions I would like addressed during the meeting. What is your plan to address the potential lack of volunteers now that the officers left? And is there adequate oversight at fire calls, both day and night? Has the township considered how their ISO rating will be affected with these changes? Thus, how will residents' insurance will change? Has the response plan changed to when there is fire that the township and neighboring departments respond? I know a week ago there was a call on the Cowpike and Jeffersonville Fire Company was the first due, which doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, if an East Norton officer needed backup, they wouldn't send West Norton. You would send the closest department like Norristown or Plymouth. Also, was this new Director of Fire Service position ever posted? Also, what is the job description for this position? Thank you for your time, Mary Beth Cronin, Kinglet Drive."
Bob, you want to address some of them questions?
Sure. I can assure you and assure the public, which we did on Facebook, there was never any issues with fire coverage. Only 2 officers resigned. The rest, it's a very seamless transition. The officers, everything's a hierarchy. If let's say the chief or the deputy chief of the fire department is out of town, there's a hierarchy of officers, of line officers. So the rest of the officers were there. We worked, the chief of police, who's also our director of public safety, and I, we've worked closely with the fire company at that moment when that issue occurred. And since then, we've had an extremely productive discussions. We have a very successful and positive and productive working group with the officers of Norton Fire Company and township officials that we meet and are really not only discussing each and every aspect of our total fire service, we're documenting it and really putting us in a better position for many years to come. So I understood some of the information that was when the email went out initially. It did obviously it caused a little concern because it was just put out there with no context. But there was never any issues with the township. Not only do we have our volunteers and our volunteer officers during the day, we have paid township staff that fight fires. And we also, every day of the year, we have a mutual aid situation that we assist and others assist. That is all agreed upon, has nothing to do with any particular event. It's the way fire service protection services functions in our township and all others. So there was no issues. Certain people tried to, obviously, out of concern maybe, but it seemed to be the confusion. It created more confusion with that statement, and it was really unfortunate. And I can assure you that the volunteer staff, volunteer officers and staff and township staff agreed that we're in a positive situation and relationship, and we continue to move forward in a more productive manner every day. As far as fire services in the future, I understand where these questions come from. We have a fire study going on, like many townships have done, that a fire consulting firm that will give us a very detailed report of volunteer fire services over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We all know volunteerism isn't what it was years ago. We don't work generally down the street from where we live or in our community. Many of us travel to our jobs, which makes volunteering harder, especially in the fire service. So it was important. We felt it was very important to have a study done that really evaluates our total process and protective services, and really give us a guide for the future that will really not only enhance the volunteer service and their needs and your direction for them, but the township as a whole. It's critically important that we all have our role, and we work closely with the volunteer fire company and will continue to do so with all of our emergency services partners. So I understand some of the questions. I don't want to get in the weeds on many others. I understand where they're coming from, should we say, with these questions. But let me just assure anyone who's out there and anyone, if anyone needs to, they can look on Facebook for our statements that we're out, and we'll be putting more statements out. We are in a good position. We are covered. You are safe. You always have been and always will be. It's our absolute duty, and we are required as a township to provide fire protection, and we'll always do that. It's important. It's important for every resident to understand never to fear confusion. We have trained professionals, and it's important that that message is out there. So please feel safe. And understand that we're continuing to grow and to build better relationships, and we will report on that in coming meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
There's one more email that came in, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
It's from Mr. John Cobb. It's to the Board of Supervisors. If it doesn't come up, is there any update on the holiday parade and tree lighting, specifically dates?
Yes, the holiday parade, which is actually run by the Tornetta family, is not happening this year due to COVID and all that has changed in our world. We know how there's so much anticipation for that parade every year for kids and families, and we know it's a sad time that we can't partner and help and support the Tornetta family with that parade, but we know that they'll be back and ready for next year to do it better than ever. As far as the tree lighting, stay tuned on that. There will be information put out probably tomorrow. We've been working very closely on it. There's going to be a pretty expansive holiday drive-through effort with, goodie bags and the like. So stay tuned for that. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. The staff is hard at work on making the best holiday event we can for our residents.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hart.
Excuse me. Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
just to clear, I know we have a lot more visitors this evening than we normally have for East Norton Township. So I just wanted to basically go over some public comment rules related to this evening. So there's a couple of things on the agenda that I'm just guessing may be of interest. First, there's a public hearing on 665 Germantown. That's a public hearing. So Mr. Weiner from law firm of Hamburg Rubin will be making a brief presentation. There will be an opportunity for board comment. There will be an opportunity for public comment. Do so by raising your hand or putting in the chat room whatsoever to Mr. Christ that you would like to comment. Mr. Christ, what would be the best way for someone that wanted to comment to do so?
They could certainly try raising their hand. The problem we've got is we've got about 48 people attending the meeting tonight, so trying to monitor all of them is going to be complicated. It'd be far easier if they did a chat message.
Okay, so just so people understand that related to that hearing tonight, then there will be an opportunity to comment. Then the board can close the public hearing or continue it, or they can, and then if they want to, they can vote on granting the relief of request. The other issue I know is related to Wawa. That is also on the agenda, a land development resolution. There are, and Supervisor McDevitt, Chair McDevitt can correct me if I'm wrong. There are, there's been a lot of back and forth between several of the attorneys on this matter. Mr. Fleischer, who I saw joined, and Mr. Kaplan, who I saw joined. There's a proposed resolution which staff will go through and explain at first, and then have an opportunity for Mr. Kaplan, who represents the applicant, to comment. Mr. Fleischer, who represents Newtees or suggested opposition to the application, to comment. And then because this is a matter of great interest to the community, and this resolution came later in today, if anybody else would like to make a brief comment or something new to illuminate the board or Mr. McDevitt and the other supervisors, we ask you do so within our time limits, and bring any new information to the board. There were two other matters on the agenda as well, and I don't know, Mr. McDevitt, was there any appetite to take additional public comment on those?
Not on the one is the ordinance for the zoning map. I don't think we need, if somebody wants to comment through email or chat, that's fine.
Okay.
And the other is the roof, the RFP for the roof. Again, on all the other items, if they just want to put it in either the chat room or email us on those.
Okay.
And we'll also, yes, and we'll also have another I'll also do a citizens to be heard at the end of the meeting.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear because I know there's a lot more visitors than we normally have and wanted so everyone understood the rules.
Okay, thank you. All right. So is there any comments from the Board of Supervisors? Okay, none being, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing for conditional use at 655 West Germantown Pike. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second.
Thank you, Supervisor DePiero. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mr. Kilkenny, you want to start the public hearing?
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Supervisor McDevitt. As you mentioned, we have a public hearing for conditional use for 665 Germantown Pike. I'm going to go ahead and mark some exhibits in the record, so we have them. Marked as Township 1 or T1 will be a copy of the newspaper, general circulation at Times Herald, advertising this public hearing. T2 will be a copy of the application itself. T3 will be a copy of recommendations of our various planning agencies related to that. If so appropriate right now, I'd like to invite Mr. Carl Wiener, who represents the applicant, to make a brief presentation in front of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Kilkenny. Thank you, members of the board. The application tonight is for a medical office building to be located at 655 West Germantown Pike, which is at the intersection of Whitehall Road and Germantown Pike. The building is proposed to house an orthopedic medical practice that is actually located nearby, currently on Germantown Pike, and has been there for over 20 years. Practice is simply, the current building is simply no longer suitable for the practice. They want to stay in the township, they want to stay nearby, and they would like to locate to this building, which they intend to purchase. With permission of the board, I think the facts in this case are fairly straightforward, and I would propose to present the case through an offer of proof as opposed to individual testimony by witnesses.
So I think that what would be appropriate then, Mr. Wiener, is because you're doing an offer of proof, that you'd be sworn by the court reporter, Mr. Couric, because that'll be essentially sworn testimony as to what the witnesses would say. All right, Mr. Couric?
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Members of the board, I mentioned this is a proposal for the relocation or the construction of a medical office building. We have, as part of our group here tonight, Bob Blue, who is the project engineer. If Bob were going to testify, he is prepared to testify that the site was approved in 2001 with the site area for a third building, along with the existing Walgreens and McDonald's. And Jim, if you could put up the aerial that was sent earlier today, I think that might help give a good visual for the property.
As soon as Dave lets me share my screen, I will do that.
I'm getting that for you, Jim.
All right.
Any luck there, Jim?
Yeah. There you go. Can you see that or no? Not yet?
I didn't see it yet.
Of course, I'm having technical difficulties here.
Okay, let me proceed, and then if there are questions, we can certainly try to work with that exhibit. But again, the site was approved in 2001 for 3 buildings. 2 of the buildings, Walgreens and the McDonald's, were built. This third was reserved as a pad site. Actually, the parking was constructed around the pad site, so all of the parking is in place. The building itself was just not constructed. The site is located immediately adjacent to the Einstein Hospital property, so it certainly is an appropriate location for a medical office building. Okay.
Oh, there we go. And that'll be, even though that's in the application, we'll have that marked as T4 for clarity. Thank you.
Okay. And so the proposed office building, again, the Walgreens is right at the corner of Whitehall Road and Germantown Pike. McDonald's is next to it along Germantown Pike, and the proposed building is located further back on Whitehall Road. The pad was, again, sized for this building, which is proposed to be a total of 10,500 square feet, 2 stories with a footprint of 5,250 square feet on each floor. When the plan was approved in 2001, it was designed with sufficient parking to anticipate a building of this size, and was designed with stormwater management to anticipate construction of a building on this pad. The parking, as I mentioned earlier, as you can see on this plan, has already been constructed around the pad site. And in the rear is an area that is green. It's an area that was designated for 50 reserved parking spaces. We are proposing to keep those parking spaces in reserve unless and until the township finds it is necessary to construct those parking spaces. Otherwise, we would utilize the existing parking on the site. We are proposing to decommission a private pump station, which is located where the hand is right, just about right now. That is currently a private pump station serving site, and we will instead hook into the Einstein system. So we'll eliminate the need for that separate pump station. The site generally, as testimony would bear out, meets the general criteria under conditional use. There is no undue impact on township services or roadways. All of this development has already been anticipated. There is certainly no adverse impact on surrounding uses. If somebody can pull up the elevations of the building. There we go. So this is what is proposed to be constructed. You will notice the main entrance faces the area away from Whitehall Road, and in the area that faces Whitehall Road, we got some feedback from the Planning Commission. I think there's another slide that shows that, and right, so that shows a small awning over the door. I believe there's another elevation which we sent in. Yes, so that shows the enhanced awning and improvements on that side facing Whitehall Road, so it will be more consistent with the other entrance to the building and give a better look to the frontage of the building from Whitehall Road. Also, some concern had been raised regarding, going back to the site plan, regarding possible conflict of traffic coming out of the Walgreens drive-through to pedestrian movements within the parking area serving the medical office building. To address that, there is you can see a faint line next to the Walgreens drive-through. That is actually a mountable curb. And at the end of that mountable curb, post a sign to call for left-hand turns out of the drive-through so that traffic would not go into the area serviced by the medical office building. I should also point out that it shows on the aerial, not on this site, but there are actually stop bars at the end of the drive-through. There are stop bars in the lane next to the drive-through. There are stop bars in front or in the traffic lanes between the Walgreens and the medical office building and on the other side. So and essentially there's a 4-way stop that is already striped out on this site through the use of stop bars. Our representative of the applicant, Josh Peterson, would be testifying that this medical practice operates from 8 to 4, Mondays through Fridays. Does not operate on weekends. First floor of the building will be used for patient services. And the second floor, 40% of that would be used for administrative offices, and the other 60% would be used for physical therapy. There are 4 physicians in the practice, 2 physical therapists and 1 physical therapy assistant. So I know that Mr. Blue and Mr. Peterson are on the Zoom, I believe, and I would ask them again to affirm that the testimony that I have just presented on their behalf represents a fair and accurate summary of their testimony and reflects their intended testimony to the board.
This is Robert Blue.
Just
Swear them in.
real quick, let's have the court reporter to swear each of those 2 individuals just so they can affirm that sworn.
Okay, gentlemen, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God, Mr. Blue.
Yes, I do.
And the other gentleman, I can't see his name.
Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Peterson.
Okay.
Is he there?
I think he just answered that he's.
Did you hear that, Sean?
Can you hear me now?
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so gentlemen, again, we please affirm for the board now that you've been sworn in that the testimony that I just presented and summarized on your behalf would have been the testimony that you would have presented if we had gone through the traditional question and answer process.
Robert Blue, yes, I affirm that.
Joshua Peterson, yes, I do too.
Okay. With that, Mr. Kilkenny, I would also move the exhibits presented into evidence, and I can conclude my presentation at this point.
Thank you very much. T to 4, T 1 through 4 are admitted. Mr. McDevitt, you want to see if you or any of the board have any questions and see if any of the public have any questions?
First, I'll ask if the board has any questions.
I do have one question, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Weiner, I'm looking at the recommendations from the Montgomery County Planning Commission as regards vehicular and pedestrian access to the building. And their first recommendation was that the applicant approach the neighboring property, which is Einstein, for the possibility of a sidewalk connection and or a roadway, so to avoid having more traffic at the intersection of Whitehall and Germantown, which is busy enough in normal times. Has anything been done in that regard?
Yes, we did attempt to approach Einstein. As some of you may be aware, Einstein is in the midst of a potential sale to Jefferson Hospital. Because of their current status of that sale, things are kind of in limbo in terms of the operation of the hospital, in terms of making that sort of commitment. So they are not in a position to make that sort of commitment because of their legal circumstances at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board?
And if there are none, Mr. Weiner, just before we went into any additional public comment, just wanted to, I know we emailed earlier today, just want to be clear, the applicant, when we issue, if there is a conditional use approval tonight or a later time, you agree that an acceptable condition would be to keep the reserved parking area as an unimproved lawn, so that should parking become necessary, it can be constructed?
Yes, applicant agrees to that condition.
And that obviously would help with stormwater issues, and that was one of the reasons why township staff suggested it, just so the public understands. And then 2, you would remove the existing private pump station and connect the sanitary sewer for the 3 buildings to the Einstein pump station.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, that is our intention, and we will agree with that condition.
Okay. And I know also too, one of the issues I emailed you about was that came up at the Planning Commission was a drive-through at the Walgreens and a potential conflict with access to the new building. Can you just address that briefly?
Sean, you broke up a little bit, but I think yeah.
I think you're on mute.
Okay, I addressed that. We will, in recognition of that, we will put a sign at the end of that mountable curb that I pointed out, pointing out left-hand turns for the traffic to come out of the Walgreens, so that we will eliminate as much traffic as possible going through the pedestrian area.
Okay, just wanted to clarify those issues before opening it up. Mr. McDevitt opens up more commissioner comment, supervisor comments for the public.
Okay. All right. At this time, I'd like to open up to public comment. Mr. Chris?
We do not have any emails, and I do not have any chat requests.
Okay. So
if there's no additional comment, you can close the public hearing and then make a motion to approve the conditional use if the board so chooses.
okay, thank you, Mr. Kilkenny. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing on 655 West Germantown Pike. Do I have a second? Thank you, Cavaletti. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now that we're back in our regular monthly meeting, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the conditional use at 655 West Germantown Pike with the clarifications of the sewer treatment plant being hooked up, and also the part where you're going to come out of the Walgreens, that they're going to work on that as the Planning Commission outlined. And I think that was about it, wasn't it, Mr. Kilkenny?
And the reserve parking
And
for additional
reserve
green space.
parking, say, green space.
Yep.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Thank you, Supervisor DeSanto. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Supervisor DePiero. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Very good.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for,
And our court reporter can go as well. So.
Very good. Thank you all for your time.
all right, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Sean, you need me for the resolution for the Wawa or no?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to move on to the next agenda item, which is old business ordinance number 587, amending the East Norton Township zoning map to rezone a portion of the property located at 3000 Keenwood Road from institutional to BR1 residential. I'd like to call on Mr. Hart to go over this.
I believe you're muted, Bob.
Unmute.
There you go.
Sorry.
That's all right.
You sounded great, Bob.
I have to say all that again? Oh, no. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you tonight is exactly what you said. It's amending the zoning map for a particular parcel on Keenwood Road, 3000 Keenwood Road. As you're well aware, this has been a property that has had some controversy around it over the course of the last few years. This is a portion of the St. Titus property. I have to say, over the last couple of years, working very closely, and especially the last 8 months or so, with the Archdiocese, working closely with the residents of that neighborhood, and township staff and the board. I'm really happy to be able to bring to you tonight an action item to change the zoning of that portion of St. Titus property to BR1. As you know, there were some uses proposed over there that really did not fit the character of the neighborhood. We listened to our residents. We agreed that, and I know it was very important to the board with all the discussions we had about it, that we find a resolution to this that makes sense. We don't want to hurt the Archdiocese. It's their property. They deserve to get a fair market value of their property. But putting something in that community, that neighborhood, that doesn't fit, that doesn't work, it doesn't work with the character of the neighborhood, would have been a real problem. And with all this hard work, we feel very confident tonight that the action item before you of changing the zoning, rezoning it from institutional to BR1 will really solve many of the problems that this property has created over the years. And I think it's a true win-win for the community, the residents in that neighborhood, for the Archdiocese, and for the township. So that is before you tonight.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the ordinance? All right, none being, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 587, amending the East Norton Township zoning map to rezone a portion of the property located at 3000 Keenwood Road from institutional to BR1 residential.
I'll put that
Do I
in
have
form of
a
a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Govanis. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Chairwoman Capoletti. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is resolution number 2820, 10 and 14 West Germantown Pike, the Wawa. I'd like to call on Director of Engineering, Mr. Jim Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll introduce this and then yield to Mr. Kilkenny for further discussion on legal matters. As you recall, this project was presented in front of the Board of Supervisors at our last meeting. It was tabled to allow legal issues to be resolved between the two adjoining property owners. And the results of those discussions are reflected in the resolution that is before you tonight. And since I said legal, I'm going to have to turn over to Mr. Kilkenny to let him give you all the particulars about these legal discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Kilkenny.
Okay. What I am going to do is, just so the public knows, I know it's been a lot of interest to the public, I am going to read portions of the resolution so people can understand exactly what the board is approving. They're approving the plan and with a set of conditions, just so everyone understands. Then I'll give an opportunity for Mr. Kaplan to comment, Mr. Fleischer to comment, as well as then petition Mr. Chris to see what additional public comment that the public would like to say about this resolution. So I'm going to start with the therefore clause. Now, therefore be resolved by the East Norton Board of Supervisors that the applicant's preliminary final land development plans are hereby granted, subject to the satisfaction of the following conditions. 1, except as modified therein, applicant shall comply with all applicable township ordinances, county, commonwealth, and federal statute, rules and regulations, and obtain all applicable permits and approvals, including but not limited to obtain the approval of the fire marshal, Montgomery County Conservation District permits, and DEP permits. 2, the applicant shall comply with all conditions and comments set forth in the township engineer review letter hereto attached as Exhibit B. 3, unless waived by the Board of Supervisors, payment in the form acceptable to the township of a fee in lieu of compliance with the open space requirements, section 175-23B2, the East Norton Township Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance, and the amount of $50,000 shall be made in dedication of land. 4, in lieu of the payment prescribed in paragraph 3, park and recreation fee, above the applicant will make a voluntary lump sum contribution in a form acceptable to the township in the amount of $50,000 to enable the township to use the money as it sees fit. 5, the applicant shall install a no truck signage at points of the 25-foot wide access easement which abuts the property. 6, applicant shall at all times indemnify, defend, and hold the township its officials, employees, and professionals, aka the engineer, solicitor, township planner, and traffic consultant, hereinafter collectively as township indemnities, harmless from any claim, injury, damage, or suit of cause in whole or in part by any alleged or actual act, omission, or negligence of the township, which may result from 1, the approval of the plan, 2, arising by reason of or during the construction of the property depicted in the plan, 3, with any adjoining or nearby property owners of the property, or any person whatsoever may bring township suit against the township for any conditions occurring on adjoining or nearby property, caused or alleged to be caused by conditions arising from conditions of the improvement depicted on the plan, except only claim, injury, damage, or suit arising from the gross negligence or willful misconduct of township indemnities. Included by way of example, but not limitation, within the applicant's indemnification of the township's indemnification is the applicant's agreement to protect the township from any claim appointing property members related to the flow of stormwater on the adjacent or nearby properties. 7, applicants shall have discussions with SEPTA regarding the need for concrete pad at the existing bus stop at the property. 8, although the applicant has the right to continue to use the existing 20-foot wide access way as presented configured, applicant has agreed to pave southernmost 4 foot of the of its 3 properties located adjacent to the 20-foot wide easement, so that the total width of the access way will be 24 feet. In order to extend the 24-foot wide access way to the Cobb Pike, the applicant shall have to obtain the agreement of PennDOT to extend the existing 24-foot wide access way over the approximately 80 feet wide parcel that PennDOT owns and which lies between the Cobb Pike and the property on which AT&T store is located. The applicant shall also have to obtain a highway occupancy permit to extend the access way to the Cobb Pike. The applicant shall apply to PennDOT for permission to extend the access way over the PennDOT property and to obtain a high occupancy permit for the construction of the access way on the PennDOT property, and shall conscientiously process the approval and the highway occupancy permit. If after the applicant uses commercially reasonable efforts to obtain the permission of PennDOT to extend the 4-foot widening of the existing 20-foot easement over the PennDOT property located adjacent to the Cobb Pike, the applicant is not able to obtain such permission, the applicant shall not have any further obligation to extend the 4-foot widening. 9, applicant shall name New Tees Company LP as an additional insured on applicant's insurance coverage regarding any claims based on improper use or design of the Cobb Pike easement area. 10, the applicant shall enter into a stormwater management agreement with the township with perpetual ownership and maintenance of proposed stormwater best management practices and form and substance satisfactory to the township solicitor and executed prior to the start of construction. 11, applicant shall enter into a land development agreement and an improvements financial security agreement with the township in a form and substance satisfactory to the township solicitor. 12, the applicant shall comply with all conditions and comments set forth in the township sewer engineer letter dated October 7, 2020, attached as Exhibit C. 13, the applicant shall comply with all conditions and comments set forth in the township traffic engineer's letter dated August 24, 2020, attached as Exhibit E. 14, further, the Board of Supervisors takes the following action as to the applicant's request for waivers from the conditions of Chapter 174, Saldo. A, 175-14, plan approval, the requirement of a preliminary plan submission to permit applicant's plan to be classified as preliminary final. Staff is recommending that that be granted. 15, the conditional preliminary final plan development approval does not and shall not authorize the construction of improvements or buildings exceeding those shown on the plans. Furthermore, this conditional preliminary final approval shall be rescinded automatically upon the applicant or applicant's agent failure to accept in writing all conditions within 10 days of receipt of this resolution. 16, by approving the resolution, the applicant is signifying the acceptance of the conditions above. So to go back over this, when we left this off at the last meeting, there were some questions related to the access easement that was described in the condition in the resolution. We had a letter from Mr. Fleischer, who represents New Tees, about this. We had a response from Mr. Kaplan, who represents the applicant. Our staff, meaning myself, the traffic engineer, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Hart, all the township professionals, reviewed both submissions, and we are recommending that the board move forward with this land development resolution as written now or in the future, because the issues have been resolved to the satisfaction of township staff.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kilkenny. At this point, I'd like to open up to, I guess we have public comment on this, Mr. Chris.
Why don't we, Mr. Kaplan first, and Mr. Fleischer, and then
okay,
public
that's
comment.
fine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Mark?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mark.
Great. So I don't want to bore everybody by going over what we went over a couple of weeks ago, but suffice it to say that my client has owned the Ray's Diner property since 1997. And when you look at the deed from Ray's, when you look at the deed to the Ray's property, to my client, the description refers to a 1967 subdivision plan that separated basically the corner of the intersection from the shopping center. And included in the grant back in 1967 was an easement over a 20-foot access way, right-of-way easement that goes out to DeKalb Pike that I don't have to explain to anybody because we've all used either the AT&T, the old gas station, Ray's Diner, or the car wash. So it's been there forever. It's only 20 feet wide, or I shouldn't say only, it's 20 feet wide. In 1987, the Tornettas, who owned the Northtown Shopping Center, recorded a subdivision plan that detailed graphically that 20-foot easement as 460 feet, I believe, by 20 feet wide, or 463 feet. It graphically showed the easement from DeKalb Pike all the way towards the shopping center and certainly beyond my client's property. So fast forward about 3 years ago, we came to the township. We, Provco Partners LP, which was then the owner of just the Ray's Diner property. We came with a Wawa at 5,051 feet and gas pumps. We went and we requested a special exception from the zoning hearing board. Zoning hearing board rejected our application for very, very minor reasons, because the gas tanks and an air pump were in the side yard. We appealed that, but at the same time, we came back and reconfigured the same development by putting the gas tanks in the front rather than the side yard, and we were granted the special exception. My friend Jay Tornetta objected to that. He said, and he was probably right, we weren't going to be able to meet the saldo requirement for the applicable width of a grass strip on either side, even though that grass strip required by the saldo has been waived many, many times. So my client, in an effort to avoid a further dispute, with the Tornettas, went out and made created a partnership with the owner of the car wash. And the new entity that is the owner of both the Ray's Diner property and the car wash property is called Provco East Norton LLC. So that entity owns those two properties. We then went back for yet a third time for a special exception, and we were granted a special exception by the Zoning Hearing Board. And this time, there were no inconsistencies or nonconformities. We got that application, got that approval. There was no appeal taken, and we submitted very detailed land development plans. The land development plans have been reviewed by Mr. Sullivan and all of the engineering consultants. And there are no zoning issues. There are no saldo issues. There are some very, very minor items. There's some very, very minor items reflected in the letters that we've agreed to comply with. And we were basically recommended for approval. We came to the board a couple of weeks ago, and there was a proposed resolution, and Mr. Tornetta objected. As best I can tell, Mr. Tornetta objected for one or two reasons. Mr. Tornetta said that the easement is 20 feet wide. The saldo requires a 24-foot wide easement or access way for two-way traffic. And he was afraid that by having a 20-foot wide easement that for two-way traffic, that there were going to be accidents, people were going to be hurt, and he would be sued because it was on his property. Mr. Fleischer, at the behest of Sean, wrote a letter basically saying the same thing and making some statements about the scope of the easement. So I went back and I delivered to the township the deed, which referred to the 1967 plan, the 1987 plan that clearly shows the easement. And the sum of that is that the township approved a 20-foot wide easement back in 1967, way before a current saldo. And therefore, the use of that easement for two-way traffic is grandfathered. I showed a letter from Jay's father, unfortunately passed away, my friend Gus Tornetta, who said that the easement had been created by the Tornetta's predecessor in title. Then I also showed that the same people who are the partners in Provco East Norton also recently bought the AT&T property. And though I think it's irrelevant to this, I demonstrated that National Title Company has ensured access from the AT&T property over the 20-foot easement. Mr. Tornetta disputes that. Therefore, we have some private dispute over the extent of the ordinance of the easement. And in my letter to Sean and Jim and Bob, I said that the township cannot be embroiled in making that decision. So based on the plan, just the way it is, we are entitled to our approval. However, in an attempt to put an end to this endless fight over, I'm not even sure what, but let's say over the easement. My clients own what I call the Ray's property, the car wash property, and the AT&T property. And in order to satisfy Jay's concern that 20 feet's not wide enough, we will build an additional 4 feet along the back, right up against the 20-foot easement going out toward DeKalb Pike. The only impediment to that is, I guess we all remember when there was a steak sandwich place on the corner beyond where AT&T is. That property is about 80 feet wide. PennDOT owns that property. So to get all the way to DeKalb Pike, we would have to extend our 4 feet over the PennDOT property and then get an HOP to have an access onto DeKalb Pike. And in order to try and make sense out of this and be the adult in the room, we are willing and have offered to build that 4 foot out to DeKalb if we can get an HOP and approval from PennDOT. And the resolution that Sean read imposes an affirmative obligation on my client to use commercially reasonable efforts to get that permit. So if we can get that permit, and remember, the PennDOT is going to widen DeKalb Pike all the way back at least to the end of the easement. So PennDOT's going to reconfigure this whole intersection going from the easement down to Germantown Pike. And when they do so, we believe, our traffic engineers, Greg Richardson and Matt Hammond, believe that PennDOT will be happy to allow us to build the right kind of 24-foot wide access way, road, whatever you want to call it. So we've offered to do that. Now, and again, just to go above, over and above, just to put this crazy dispute to rest, we have offered, and there's a condition of the approval, that Provco, which owns many, many properties and has big umbrella policies against liability, will add 4 Ts as an insured or an additional insured, so that if something untoward happens on that now 24-foot wide access way and they get sued, they'll be insured. So that's what we offered. Now, one postscript to that. Bob Hart, sitting in his office listening to all of this, said, wait a minute. If there's some crazy lawsuit, the township's going to be sued. And he and Sean asked that we indemnify the township against any liability for approving it or something that happens in construction, the normal kind of indemnification that a developer gives to a municipality that approves an application. And just so there's no question, Sean has asked that we put that indemnification in the resolution. I pulled the indemnification from a township development agreement that I'm working on, and we're fine with that. So I think that we've done everything that we can to satisfy township's requirements. Obviously, it's a permitted use. And I guess there's one final point. So when we get done, Jerry Holtz and his partner will take down the Ray's Diner, will take down the car wash, will in some way integrate ultimately the AT&T after PennDOT does its improvements, and we'll finally have this corner looking like it should, not like, as Jerry said to me today, not like Beirut. So the Tornettas will take whatever position they take. We would ask that you approve this tonight in accordance with the resolution, and we would like to move on. And thank you for paying attention to that very long description.
Thank you.
Mr. Fleischer?
Good evening. Thank you. And first, I'd like to say that the rumors of Gus Tornetta's passing are thankfully not accurate. Gus is alive and well.
Oh, I apologize, Ken.
Don't apologize to me.
I'll apologize.
I'm just smiling because the Tornettas and you and your firm go back many, many years. And I'm sure Gus would, if he were listening, would be laughing. I can't hear Jay laughing or Michael laughing. I know they're on, but they're muted. So in that regard, I just wanted to correct that. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me to join this evening. And I would like to preface my remarks on behalf of New Tees and the Tornettas by saying that the Tornettas do not have an objection to the development of a Wawa on the property owned by the developer here. They never have. Tornettas have always asked is that their property rights not be infringed upon and that the development be done in accordance with applicable laws and applicable codes. The history between the developer and the Tornettas goes back almost 10 years. It began with a lawsuit where the developer sued the Tornettas and said that they were entitled to an easement, not the easement at issue here, but a different easement over the shopping center property so they could run their traffic between the proposed Wawa and the signalized intersection on Germantown Pike. That litigation was resolved after many years, went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. It was resolved in favor of the Tornettas. And the DeKalb easement, the 200 and some foot easement at issue here, was a large part of that litigation. The Tornettas and the New Tees do not have an obligation to let their property be used in violation of law, nor do they have an obligation to allow additional uses over and above those provided by the DeKalb easement on their property. Mark and I have had some discussion over the 1987 plan, which he submitted to this board and what it means. I submitted to the board the historical deeds for the AT&T property, the 8 East Germantown Pike property, none of which contains any reference to the existence of the easement. The easement was created in the subdivision deeds back in 1967. It's not a separate document of record which is recorded against any of or in favor of any of the properties. It's a deed created easement. And it exists in the historical deeds for the Ray's Diner property and the car wash property. It does not exist in the historical deeds, never did exist in the historical deeds for 8 East Germantown Pike, the AT&T, and certainly never existed for the corner property, PennDOT property today. So Mark looks at the 1987 plan and says, well, that plan refers to the easement, which it does, and it says that the easement pertains to the properties that his clients own. We can debate whether that is accurate, or I shouldn't say accurate. We can debate the legal effect of the 1987 plan from now till doomsday. But nobody can say that the 1987 plan or anything else in the township records says that the easement applies to the PennDOT property, the 80 feet that Mark mentions. There is no right of access between the PennDOT property and the New Tees property. And just for clarification, the easement is a 20-foot section of my client's property. It is, the underlying fee is owned by my client. It is owned by the Northtown Shopping Center New Tees company. So the 80 feet at least, we can debate again the AT&T, but let's table that for now. The 80 feet on the corner does not have the right of use of that easement, never had the right of use of the easement, and cannot be assumed by this board that the resolution as presented would say, as it does in, I think it's section 8, that the applicant has to obtain the agreement of PennDOT to extend the 24-foot wide access way over the border. That permission has to come from both PennDOT and New Tees. It does not come only from PennDOT. And New Tees is not obligated to give that permission to assist this developer. New Tees is not obligated to give any more than was given in 1967 or otherwise. So I share with the board my concern that the resolution as written adversely and improperly affects my client's title to its property, and adversely and improperly imposes an obligation or some sort of burden on my client to allow the 24-foot wide proposed improvements to cross over its own border where there's no crossing right now. So I hesitate to say that the resolution as written is incorrect because it assumes a property right that does not exist. Further, the indemnity is not just in favor, or should not just be in favor of the township. When Mr. Kaplan and I had some discussions, and they've been over the last few days, and you look back at the wording of the easement, whatever improvements are going to be made here are going to be made on my client's property. The easement as written, and I can read it, it's contained in the letter that I wrote to Mr. Kilkenny, but the easement language, which is in the historical deeds, says that the properties granted the easement are entitled to the free and common use, right, liberty, and privilege of the certain right-of-way in common with others granted the use thereof for ingress, egress, and regress in and from DeKalb Pike as and from a passageway at all times hereafter forever, which said right-of-way has a frontage of 20 feet on the east side of DeKalb Pike by a depth of 463.24 on the south and a depth of 463.12 feet on the north, as shown on the above mentioned plan. The grantor herein shall have no obligation or expense to keep the said right-of-way in good order and repair. So several things about that. First of all, any indemnity or any construction indemnity or any other indemnity has to include my client, because my client has, quote, no obligation or expense to keep the said right-of-way in good order and repair. If there's going to be work done on this easement area, if there's going to be paving, if there's going to be widening, if there's going to be stormwater runoff, and I saw that in the proposed the proposed resolution as well. It's only 2 properties that are possibly affected by stormwater runoff. One is the corner property owned by PennDOT, and the other is 463 feet along my client's property and on my client's property. So if there are going to be, if there's going to be development, if there's going to be improvement, anything that goes on there is the responsibility of the holder of the easement. The easement even says specifically that the owner of the property has no obligation to keep it in good order and repair. So if there's an accident, whether it's caused by a 20-foot wide problem or by a pothole or by anything else that's in this area, it is not the problem of the owner and should not be. And any indemnity should extend to the owner and also should extend to future owners of both properties. As written in the proposed resolution, that indemnity applies to the current parties, Newtees and the Provco entity, but it should also apply to any future owners of any of the properties involved. It should be a perpetual indemnity, as should be the insurance. And the insurance should be for much more than just the design. It should be for maintenance. It should be for repair. It should be for anything that happens on that property other than something literally caused by my clients. So those are additional comments. There was discussion in Mr. Kaplan's presentation and in the resolution about signage. As I read to you the easement does not permit signage in the easement area. The Tornettas are not required to submit their property to anything which the easement does not allow. And there is nothing in the easement that allows signage. So anything in the resolution which assumes not only that the first 80 feet is subject to use of the easement area, the PennDOT property, but also further assumes that the easement area can be improved with signage, violates the easement. We're not asking this panel to enforce the easement. We're asking that this board not violate it and not approve a plan or put conditions in a plan which violate the easement. It's not the Tornetta's job to rewrite the easement. It's not the Tornetta's obligation to submit their property to use or to any other improvement which is not permitted by the easement. The Tornettas feel in some way that they're being painted as the bad guys here. They're not. This whole thing started when they were the defendants in a lawsuit. They didn't bring the lawsuit. And now they're being essentially imposed upon, saying that an easement which was written 53 years ago says things that it doesn't say and gives rights to property owners which they do not have. So the board cannot rewrite the easement either. And it would be a violation of the easement. It would be a violation of my client's property rights to assume that the PennDOT property, forgetting about the AT&T, we can talk about that, as I said, ad nauseum, but the PennDOT property has the right to use the easement area. It doesn't. And my client has no obligation to allow that. My client has no obligation to allow signage. My client has no objection to the use of the easement area in accordance with the easement and in accordance with code. We did not impose a 24-foot wide requirement in Saldo. That's the township's job. It says that there is a grandfathering. And he cited to me verbally on the phone earlier this morning a case with which he's familiar. And his familiarity with the law in this may or may not be greater than mine, but just thinking out loud, I know certainly from other areas of law, if you completely reconfigure a property, you change its use, you redevelop it, whatever grandfathering may have existed doesn't exist anymore. Something that happened in 1967 when there was a raised under a car wash on separate properties. Now that those properties are going to be consolidated, you don't even have the same parcel. You certainly have a tremendously more intensive use, a super Wawa with the traffic that it's going to have, with the tanker trucks that it's going to have, with the delivery trucks, let alone the passenger cars that are going to go there, is not the same thing as as a 1967 Bob's Big Boy, which was what was originally on the Ray Steiner parcel. So to assume again that my clients are responsible for delaying or interrupting or anything else, my clients are only saying that they don't want their property rights to be impeded or imposed upon, and that they will defend those property rights. They've done so in the past. This particular case with this particular developer, and if necessary, they'll do it again. They're not spoiling for a fight. They just don't want to change what exists. They don't want to change the law. They don't want to change the easement. And they don't want this board to assume that the plan which they propose to approve will basically supersede my client's property rights. So on that basis, we object to the approval of the plan. We submitted that if the easement area were used for one-way traffic, we have no objection. We can't certainly object to the easement on the owner, on the user's side being widened to 24 feet, but that can't happen all the way out to DeKalb Pike unless you get my client's consent. Because no matter what you think happens with the 8 East Germantown property, that easement does not extend to the PennDOT property. There's no signage permitted in the easement area. The easement says what it says. It can't be expanded. And this board can't expand the easement. So on all of those grounds, we believe that the resolution as proposed is inappropriate, violates my client's property rights, and really makes assumptions about what those property rights are, which are incorrect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fleischer, Mr. Kaplan. Supervisor McDevitt, I'm sure the board has had the opportunity to hear this. No, I don't think we're gonna, no. I don't think we should get into more back and forth. I would suggest, Mr. McDevitt, you see if the public has any effort to comment.
First, I'd like to know if any of the board members have any comment. Okay, none being, then we'll bring in public comment. Mr. Chris, is there any public comment?
Chairman, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Jay Tornetta. May I be permitted to have a comment, please?
Yes.
So, first of all, I'm a little bit offended. As a pretty large property holder in East Norton Township, I don't believe anything in East Norton looks like Beirut. And very frankly, I'm offended by that comment, A. B, I think most of you folks know me pretty well, and I'm a pretty fair guy across the board. And what you folks need to know here, as Kenny mentioned, I feel we're trying to be painted as the bad guys here. As I mentioned before on our last meeting, and I appreciated everybody's diligence in listening to me, that, you know, our family was sued by the developer. And in order to protect the tenants at Northtown, protect the Sunoco station, to protect presidential caterers, to protect the shopping center across where they wanted to bring the traffic through a signalized intersection that wasn't designed for the Wawa traffic, I put all the money up to defend everybody. And you folks need to know that in this case, over the last 10 years, between going to the hearings where Wawa wanted to put everything on one lot with not having any buffers and not having the proper traffic and paying all my consultants to bring these issues to light, and then the township agreed with our position, then going to the zoning hearing board and bringing to everybody's attention about structures in the front yard and canopies and tanks which weren't meeting the code, but the developer felt was appropriate, okay? And then not addressing, as early as the last meeting that we had a month ago, that the 20-foot easement wasn't even addressed on their plan. No ingress or egress, no two-way traffic. And again, if our group doesn't come to the meeting and explain it to everybody, you're approving something that you really don't understand. And we felt it was the obligation to do that. I think you need to understand two things. I brought up the indemnification at the last meeting. And if New Tees didn't, there would be no indemnification for the township in this resolution, because you were going to pass a different resolution last month. So before you vote tonight, I want you to understand what Mr. Fleischer said. There is no vehicular, pedestrian, any rights between the PennDOT ground and our easement for 80 feet. And there's a barrier there right now. You need to hear from me and not by any attorneys. That will never be opened up. So if you believe it's a safe condition for the first 80 feet going in and out of Route 202 from the easement on 20 feet for a Super Wawa with an AT&T store, with all that traffic going in there, and you believe that's a safe condition, then you need to vote in that manner. And if you believe that's not a safe condition because you were misled on this extension of 4 feet over everybody's property, then I think you need to deny this. And I think you needed to hear this from me as the property owner. You folks all know me pretty well, and I'm not going to hide behind my attorney, who I really appreciate coming on and making very, very intelligent comments for me, but I think you needed to hear it from me. I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you for listening to me, and I appreciate your careful consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Tornetta. Are there any other public comments?
Yes.
Yes.
My name's Gus Mandrakia.
Okay.
I own Presidential Caterers across the street from this project.
Yes.
Over the years, my family were the oldest family business in East Norton Township. My father came out in 1951. And over the years, we've seen the traffic increase greatly. When I have a large function at Presidential, I hire East Norton Police Department to direct the traffic in and out of my building, to protect the cars coming in all the directions. And please, they get 24 feet and they exit and enter too. You're saying that these cars are going to cross over 3 lanes to get to the inner lane if they're going to turn left on the Germantown Pike, or they're going to come out of that highway at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning with traffic backed up to the suburban hospital. This is an accident ready to happen. And if you approve this project, the supervisors that are elected officials, do you care about the people that are coming north and south? Because if you approve it, then you don't want to protect people. There's no way that traffic can work exiting on the 202. If they exit on the Germantown Pike, they have to turn right. The medial strip in front of my property, when the highway was done, I was approached for a cut, and I turned it down because of the exit that was going to happen trying to cross over the highway. It's not a safe situation. Hey, we all shop at Wawa. I have no objection to a Wawa. But you, the supervisors, have to understand the danger. Now, are you all going to be responsible for an accident that's going to happen? If, God forbid, someone gets killed. I know what it's like in front of my building on 202 when it's a 4-lane highway that turns into a 2-lane highway. It's a race to get to that two lanes. Now, PennDOT is getting close to us right now. And now, look, my building is already stepped back. But gentlemen, this project with the traffic accidents, that's going to happen. You have to see that. And I don't know whether you see it. If you approve it, then, you're just approving it and not really looking at the real issues, the traffic coming in and the traffic exiting. Now, with them buying the car wash and AT&T, now there's going to be, I presume, 3 entrances. Now, when you turn left on the Germantown Pike from 202, there's not a lot of cars that go into AT&T, but what's going to stop a car from turning into that first entrance? Well, I don't believe it, and it's a short light. people race to turn left. It's a traffic hazard that's going to happen, and accidents are going to happen. And I'm going to tell you right now, the first couple accidents, it's going to be on your shoulders that you approve this project with not understanding the potential hazards. And I hope you all see that and look at this a lot closer. Again, being a resident, a business owner in East Norton Township for so many years, and when, this was farm country, it's farm country anymore. Again, I thank you for your time, and I hope you see exactly what I'm saying and understand the hazards that are going to be.
Okay, thank
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Mr. Chairman, it's Mark Kaplan. We've now had 3 people talk on behalf of the Tornettas, and I would like to respond.
Mr. Kaplan, it's up to you, Mr. McDevitt.
No,
I
I think
believe
we've
you had the opportunity to
Mr.
comment,
Kaplan.
so that we'll just hear what the rest of the public has to say.
Yes.
And then the board can take a vote or not take a vote or whatever.
Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Are you saying that I can't respond to this?
You have the this is not a public hearing, Mr. Kaplan. You have the opportunity to comment. We're going to take the rest of the public comment and then move on.
Well, I thought there was no other public comment. I waited that there was no other public comment.
Mr. Kaplan, what I'm trying to say to you is you had the opportunity to comment on the land development resolution. I believe you did for about 15 minutes. Mr. Fleischer had the opportunity to comment for about 15 minutes. The board is hearing from the public. If there's no more public comment, I believe the board is going to take action. I don't think there's any desire for them to hear more public comment from either you or Mr. Fleischer, unless if I'm mistaken.
No, I agree. I agree. I would like to hear if there's any more public comment. I believe we've heard from everybody else as far as the attorneys. Now, if there's no more public comment, then again, I'll ask if there's any board comment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. So listening to Mr. Kaplan and Mr. Fleischer, and then Mr. Tornetta and Mr. Mandrakia, I feel like we're left with a lot of information and a lot of guilt and a lot. I am going to ask for myself that we table this. I don't know if you put that out to the board or
yes.
I personally am not ready to decide on this.
Okay. All right. So
By Robert's
Mr.
rules, if
DeSantis-
there's a motion to table, if there's a second, you take the vote on the motion to table first before there's any action on the actual resolution. Chair McDevitt.
Yes. Can I make a comment on the tabling?
Sure.
Mr. Kilkenny? Okay. Yes, I agree. We need to table this motion. And I think it seems like this has been going on for years. And right now, this vote, if we would take it, is something that the courts have been trying to argue out for quite a long time. And I think even after we make a vote, the courts will continue to still argue this point. So at this time, I'm going to take Supervisor DeSanto's motion to table this item, and I'm also going to second that table. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. McDevitt, I'm going to lodge an objection.
Excuse me, sir.
Excuse me.
We're in a we're taking a vote here.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
At this time, I heard. Can I, Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Can you do a vote?
Yeah,
roll call.
For everybody.
We'll do a roll call. Mr. Gavanna,
Aye.
Mr. DeSanto,
Aye.
Mr. Piro, She may be muted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm good. No, I don't want to table it. I want to vote.
Okay. Ms. Capoletti,
Nay.
Mr. McDevitt.
Aye.
And what do we have? Three ayes to table it. Motion is tabled.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for all your input, and hopefully we can get this worked out one way or the other.
Excuse me, Mr. McDevitt.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Kaplan.
Excuse me. So at the last meeting, the objections of Mr. Tornetta were made. And I was asked to respond to what Mr. Fleischer and Mr. Tornetta put out. And I responded to it. I responded to it in detail. And maybe I made a mistake. I tried to accommodate, or my client tried to accommodate Mr. Tornetta. Mr. Tornetta said 20 feet was not wide enough, even though it's clear that that 20 feet has been there forever and can be used. So we tried to accommodate Mr. Tornetta, and we said that, okay, we own the property going out toward DeKalb Pike, and we'll dedicate 4 more feet out to DeKalb Pike. And and the other thing is, we'll cover him with insurance. And that was okay to your staff. Jay comes in here, and Ken comes in here and talks about our violating his easement, not with regard to the 2 properties we're here about, but they made up this story that by adding the 4 feet, we're going to violate their easement where the AT&T property is. And we're going to violate somehow the easement where the PennDOT property is. That's not so. All we have said is that we will add 4 more feet. The access to the AT&T property and the access along PennDOT is not before this board. Now, you asked us 2 weeks ago or whatever it was.
Mr. Kaplan, this is
right.
Enough. I think we need.
You let 3 people
Mr.
talk.
Mr. Kaplan, I think we need to move on in this. We're tabling this motion. We can have this argument later on in the month with the staff and come up with some sort of a solution, hopefully. But we have to move on at this point. Okay, at this point, I would like to bring up the next item on the agenda. Let's see where we're at. Which is the East Norton Township 2021 budget presentation.
Thank you, Chairman McDevitt. If you can just give me a moment here to get my bearings.
Sure. I think we all need our bearings.
Okay, hopefully you can see on screen the presentation of the 2021 proposed budget for East Norton Township.
Okay, there you go.
Well, you can see it, but I can't. So hold on a moment.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So just a reminder about where we stand in this process. Back on October 27th, we had an initial budget presentation to the board, and you authorized advertisement of the proposed 2021 budget, which is what we did. It's been advertised in the paper. It's available on our website, and of course, it's available in the building as well. Tonight, we have our second budget presentation all leading up to December 8th, when we'll have our third and final budget presentation, and we'll have a fiscal year 2021 budget in front of the board for consideration of adoption. Just a reminder that during the budget season, there's 4 guiding principles that we follow, and we created these several years ago when we started the budget season, probably 5 years ago when I started here. And these are the 4 pillars that we follow each and every season as our starting point. And we always preserve to make sure that we preserve and enhance the assets of the township. The second guiding principle we follow is to work towards strengthening the public trust of our residents in the township. The third guiding principle is to treat everyone who comes in contact with the township with respect and work as cooperatively as possible with all the residents and businesses to create the best possible township for everyone who lives and works here. Now, on top of that, each year we set out and develop budget goals, and these are unique to the specific fiscal year that we're in. And in 2021, we developed 4 budget goals. One is that we wanted to make sure that we, if we can, have no tax increase for our residents. The second one is to, as much as possible, minimize the use of our fund balance, our savings, in order to balance our budgets. Third, once again, we want to be good stewards of the township's financial resources. And what we mean by that is we don't want to spend money where we don't have to. We want to make sure that we invest the monies prudently. And finally, the fourth goal for this year is to make sure that we're enhancing East Norton Township for all the residents and visitors. And what we mean here is that we want to make sure that we're investing our tax dollars wisely, making sure that East Norton Township becomes the best place possible for our taxpayers. So where we stand tonight is we got a proposed fiscal year 2021 budget for our 13 different funds. Right now, we've got expenditures totaling just a little over $16 million and revenues totaling just a little bit over $14 million. So as you know, we still have a little bit more work to do to get to a balanced budget. And one of the reasons is that we still have in this budget proposal all of the different capital requests that the different departments have put forward. We've started to work on prioritizing those and trying to make some determinations about what's going to get in the budget and what won't. We'll make those determinations more so over the next 3 weeks, which will include, of course, meetings with the with individual board members to go through that. One of the things we'd like to point out is where our tax monies go. What do we spend all of those tax dollars on? And one of the ways we show that is to show what are called sources of expenses. And as this chart shows, 40% of the expenditures across all of our funds go to salary and wages. Employee benefits are about 17%. Pensions and other post-employment benefits are about 11%. And then you can see the remainder broken out among capital equipment, contributions, professional services, utilities, and supplies and other services. This isn't an unusual distribution. Actually, in our case, it's probably the salaries and benefits proportion is probably a little lower than what a number of other townships are broken out as. Then the question always comes up is how we spend our money based on departmental activities. And this is where we break things out into 5 different categories: Parks and Recreation, Public Works, Planning and Zoning, General Government, and Public Safety. And as you can see the numbers on the chart, as with most townships, public safety is our largest expenditure area, accounting for roughly 48% of the proposed budget. Public Works is next, which is typical, 25%. And then General Government, which is kind of a catch-all for everything that doesn't fit into the other 4 categories. And then Parks and Recs and Planning and Zoning. We thought it would be appropriate to give you an idea about where all the money comes from to pay for all those expenditures. And in our particular case, the bulk of our revenue comes from Act 511 taxes. Those are our local income tax, our local earned income tax, business privilege tax, local services tax, property transfers. They account for 51% of our revenue. Property taxes, which a lot of people tend to think that they are the largest income category and that they pay for most of our expenses. It's not really. That's about 25% of our budget. And then transfers, grants, and licenses and permits make up the remainder of our revenue categories. And one of the things we're proposing is for property taxes is to keep them at the same millage rate that they have been since 2010 rather. So that would mean 12 consistent years of taxes at 2.727 mils. And as I mentioned at the outset, one of the budget goals for this year is to keep those taxes at that same rate, and that's what we're working towards. As you imagine, we get a lot of questions from taxpayers asking about where do their tax dollars go? How come their taxes are so high? What are they getting for their money? And of course, on the previous charts, we showed where all the money goes, but we thought it'd be appropriate to also show about those tax dollars. When someone talks about paying their tax bill and where their tax monies go, this chart highlights for you the three organizations that bill for property taxes: East Norriton Township, Montgomery County, and the Norristown Area School District. As you can see from this chart, East Norriton Township makes up about 6% of a taxpayer's property owner's tax bill at 2.727 mils. Montgomery County makes up about 8% of a tax bill with slightly higher millage at 3.849. And the school district makes up 86% of every property owner's tax bill, currently, I believe, at 39.2 mils. So when we have folks talk to us about their tax bills and why they're high and why they keep going up, we always like to tell them the township's tax bill hasn't gone up. It's been consistent for 12, well, will be for 12 years if we hold the line for next year. Other organizations where those tax millages keep going up. And as this chart highlights, of an average taxpayer's bill, property tax bill of about $8,000, the township gets $487, the county gets $687, and the school district gets about $7,000. So a large part of every year's budget, but in 2021 in particular, is infrastructure investment. And in 2019, we started an active program of improving the aging infrastructure of the township. We continued that in 2020, although we did have some setbacks because of COVID. We didn't accomplish as much as we would have liked to, although we did actually accomplish a lot given those constraints. But in 2021, we're continuing with that infrastructure investment. And again, that's working towards making sure that we've got a viable place for all of our taxpayers, for our residents, and for our visitors. We're looking at alternative power initiatives within the township, specifically solar power. Everyone should know by now that we also put our electric car chargers out in the municipal building lot, which have been extremely popular. We're continuing our LED lighting initiatives within our complex, but then also out in the neighborhoods. Park improvements, road improvements, storm drainage, traffic control. These are all infrastructure items that for many, many years have kind of been put on the back burner. They finally got moved up to the front back in 2019, 2020, and then we're going to be continuing that in 2021 as well. Also proposing the budget at this point. Now, bear in mind, we do have an unbalanced budget at this stage, which isn't unusual. So not all of these will make the final cut, but there's proposals for new police vehicles, public works vehicles, computers within the municipal building, and continued renovations within the municipal building as well. So at the outset, I mentioned we set out to achieve 4 goals for this year. No tax increase, minimize the use of our savings to balance the budgets, be good stewards, and enhance the township. And at this point, we feel we're going to be able to achieve that first goal, meaning no tax increase for next year. We also think we're on track to achieving that second goal, which is minimizing the use of our savings so that we can build that rather than diminish it. We're working on that good stewards part, meaning that we're working on how we can improve that infrastructure and make this a better place for everyone. The last one as well, we're working underway with as well. So we're just about there. Next up, we've got this tonight's meeting where we're reviewing the proposed budget. Over the next 3 weeks, we'll have some more management and departmental meetings, and we'll meet individual with board members to go through the proposed budgets. I think everybody remembers the 85-page budget report that we sent out this year. Last year, we'll be sending that out again for everybody to take a look at. And then finally, on December 8th, public meeting will be presented the final budget for a consideration for adoption by the board. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions from the board?
No.
No. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chris. You did a yeoman's job. Great. Great to see it.
I appreciate that.
Okay, next item on the agenda is to authorize advertisements for the 2021 fiscal year auditing service. I'd like to call again on Mr. Chris.
Well, as the board may recall, each January at the reorganization meeting, the township contracts with a professional CPA firm to audit our accounting records and to develop our annual financial statements. By law, we're required to advertise the intent of that contract. And so in order to satisfy those legal obligations under the second-class township code, what we're requesting tonight is authorization from the board to advertise the intent to appoint B. Bergvall and Company as auditors for the fiscal year 2021 at the January organizational meeting. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, none being, I'd like to authorize advertisement for the 2021 fiscal year auditing service. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chairwoman Capoletti. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was DePiero.
Opposed? Ayes carried. Next item on the agenda is authorizing advertisement for an RFP for the new roof of the township building and police garage. I'd like to call on Mr. Hart to review this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've really been addressing some long neglect infrastructure projects. Obviously, we're out in the community with our substantial road projects, road improvement projects, which we've been working on, and wastewater, our stormwater piping. We've been putting a lot of time in on that and really investing in our township infrastructure for our residents. And part of that is also taking care of home base, the township campus. The roof on our township building, I think, was put on by Moses because it's as old as you can imagine. The roof on the police garage is in bad shape as well. Before you tonight is authorization to advertise an RFP to install a new roof, to get prices to install a new roof and gutters on both the township building and the police garage.
Okay, any questions? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to authorize advertisement for an RFP for the new roof for the township building and the police garage. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second that motion.
Second by Supervisor Cabanas. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is the expenditures for the month of November 2020 for $127,670.23. I'd like to make that in a form of a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Supervisor DeSanto. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, this next motion is kind of sad and kind of joyous at the same time. And it's accepting Vice Chairwoman Amanda Capoletti's resignation. Chairwoman Capoletti was voted in as state senator. And at this point, she has to resign from our board. And I just have to say that this is, it's kind of a blow for our board, but also I think she's going to do great things in the state of Pennsylvania. So I'm going to call on any other supervisors that have any comments to the resignation before I put it in the form of a motion.
I'm going last.
Okay, who wants to go?
I'll comment.
Okay.
I enjoyed my years and my term on the board working with Vice Chair Capoletti, and I, for one, will miss her presence. But I look forward on a positive note with working with her in her new capacity, and then her and the East Norton Township Board of Supervisors working together to, again, do the best we can for the people that we serve. And I wish you a lot of luck, Amanda.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, any other supervisors?
Yes, I'm next. Since Amy Poehler or Tina Fey is going to go last, I have to say it's been a pleasure. I think that you're going to do great things in Harrisburg. As I've said to anyone who would listen to me, I think that the refreshing part is that you'll be everyone's state senator. We've had representation that didn't represent the entire district, and I know that you will look out for the best interest of the entire district. On a personal note, I'll miss you, but don't worry. When East Norton needs something, we'll give you a call.
Okay.
Am I next?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So first of all, congratulations, madam. I'm so excited for you. I'm so grateful to have the privilege to know you. Personally and professionally, you've helped me grow as a woman. Many people may not know she's one of my best friends, and she's really helped me through some personal hardships I've had, and helped me navigate. And she's just an all-around good person with a heart of gold. And I think the government needs more people like Amanda Capoletti. And I'm just so honored to have been part of the journey for just momentarily. And I know you were just too big for this board. So I'm happy, I'm privileged, I'm grateful, I'm excited, and a little sad because you've been my partner in crime through all of this. And I love you, and congratulations, and you will be sorely missed.
Okay, Amanda, you're up.
Told you you're going to make me cry before having me speak. I can't even begin to put into words what a privilege and an honor it has been to serve with the four of you. Not only are you colleagues, but you all know that you're a friend as well, and some of the dearest friends that I've ever made. I several years ago made the decision to run for local office, and you all welcomed me with open arms. And when it came to fruition that I was going to be joining the board with all of you, the staff that are here, as well as the citizens that are even still here, you all welcomed me with open arms. I'm not a native of East Norriton or even Norristown or Montgomery County. I grew up in Berks County, and I'm a bit of a transplant, and I could not have moved to a better township, to a better area. I love my life here. I love the people that I have met, and I am so incredibly grateful. I am sad to be leaving you all because it has been such an incredible journey, and but I'm not really leaving, I guess, because I am very excited to take a different role in helping the township and working with all of you in serving as the state senator, and that I am very excited to be able to do. So I want you all to know that I will continue to work as hard as I can to be accessible, not just to the board, but to, I think, as Supervisor DeSantis said, to all of the constituents of the 17th district. But those of you that already know me here, know me, that I want to be as accessible as possible, and will continue to work to be so, to ensure that, we're working to pass policies and support our communities through the good times and the bad. And I know that 2020 has been a bit of a crazy year and feels like there's been more downs than ups, but I promise you I'm going to work to make sure that more ups come our way. So yes, as of November 30th, I will no longer be serving on the Board of Supervisors. I will be preparing to take on a new role, but it is not goodbye. It is, working with you in a different capacity. So thank you all so much for everything. And I look forward to continuing to work with you, because you all, again, you all have my number. You know how to get a hold of me when East Norwich needs something. Can't get away from it.
I'm not sure how the clapping would work, but I'd like to hear a round of applause from everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So good luck. And I'd like to make a form of a motion accepting Chairwoman Capoletti's resignation. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Supervisor DePiero. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is the scheduled meetings. Wednesday, November 18th is the Planning Commission meeting. Monday, November 23rd is the Historical Advisory Committee. The township will be closed for Thanksgiving on November 26th and November 27th. And then we meet back here on December 8th for Executive Board and Board of Supervisors. So. I'd like to, Mr. Chris, is there any citizens to be heard?
Mr. Chairman, we have no emails or chat requests.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other business, manager's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's late, so I'll try to make this quick. Just wanted to remind everyone we have coming up, and stay tuned for more information. We're going to do a robocall. We're going to have Facebook posts about our Christmas event. It'll be a drive-through Christmas event with a lot of surprises. I really think the kids and many of the adults in our township are going to really enjoy this. Our staff, our Parks and Rec staff, and honestly, everyone from police to administration is working hard to really bring a real joy and excitement to the Christmas season and the holiday season, especially so in these COVID times. So stay tuned for that. Lastly, just to reiterate, it came up earlier on a question. I just want to assure every resident out there that our fire protection services are second to none in this entire Commonwealth. We have an outstanding group of volunteers and professionals that do the job every day. We have an outstanding EMS, emergency services team that guides our services. So rest easy. We have outstanding people, committed, passionate people, professional people that are there 24/7 for you. Lastly, on behalf of all the staff in East Norriton Township and myself personally, we want to wish Supervisor Capoletti well, as Senator elect Capoletti well. You're working with you on a personal level, your character, your integrity, you're guided by your courage and your work ethic is so awe-inspiring. and inspirational to me on a personal level, and I know to so many of us throughout our township. And I know there's going to be some great things in your future. I know you're nothing's going to stop you working in the state capitol, and I predict you're going to be the most famous Capoletti in Pennsylvania history. So God bless.
And there's some big shoes to fill there, Mr. Hart. There's another Capoletti everybody wants to know if I'm related to.
Yes. Yeah, that's where I'm going. Yes. Okay. That's
Hey,
it. Mr.
all right, is there any questions for the manager? All right, none being, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
A second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Capoletti. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. See everybody on the 8th.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.